Hello people, this is Sonali, the Melodramatic Bookworm. If you've been here before, welcome back, and if you're new to my channel, welcome to the Melodramatic Bookworm family. Also, welcome to my last book haul of 2023. If you've been following me for a while, you know that every book haul that I used to make used to contain like tens of books, and I used to make them 4 or 5 times a year. But moving to Australia has meant that I've had to curb my spending on books because books are relatively expensive here. But does that stop us? Not really. But still, I've been holding back considerably, so in today's video you will be seeing only 23 books. And you'll understand the gap if I'm saying only for 23 books, because holding up an 80 book haul seems to make the 23 look tiny in comparison. But these 23 books are a combination of review copies that I've received and books that I've bought for myself, and I will be going through them in the order that I received them. Some of these you've already seen in previous videos, some you haven't, and some you will be seeing soon. Also, a quick reminder that the books that I've already spoken about in previous videos or Instagram posts or blog posts, I will link them down in the description box below, so be sure to go and check them out. So without any further ado, let's dive right into this book haul video, this last book haul of 2023, and let me show you all the books that I got or bought since my last book haul. First up is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, and this is the Pulitzer Prize winning novel inspired by Charles Dickens's classic David Copperfield, but this one is set in Appalachia, and this follows a boy who is born to a teenage mother, and he gets the nickname Demon Copperhead because of his hair and because of his irreverent attitude. And this book follows his survival and growth through poverty. I don't know much else about it, and I haven't read David Copperfield to have a better understanding of what this book has to offer, but I'm completely fine with it, and I am okay with going into a book blind and going into it without knowing anything about it. I've also never read Barbara Kingsolver before. Also, I did come close to reading Flight Behavior a few years ago for a reading challenge that I was doing, but that never happened either. And I've been hearing amazing things about this book as well, with some of my favorite bookstagrammers, people whose book opinions I tend to trust, putting it on their favorites list, all-time favorites list no less. So I'm really excited to read this one, especially because I can annotate and tab it. Yeah, I've come a long way, I know. Next was Pockets by Hannah Carlson. This one was for a Block Tour stop with Algonquin Books, but it ended up being a DNF for me. Pockets is a non-fiction book in which Hannah Carlson maps out the history of pockets, who had access to it, and why it was that women were restricted from using them. She goes through the gender politics and the privilege that comes with the simple ease of having a pocket sewn into one's clothes, while also expanding on the evolution of pockets as well as the meanings behind different pocket related gestures. It was an interesting start, but I felt like the language used was very academic. If the author wanted to reach more people, then I feel like she should have used simpler, more accessible language. Maybe that would have made the book a lot better. Next was Find Him Where You Left Him Dead by Kristen Simmons. This is the first in the Death Games series, and this was a review copy from Torteen, and I enjoyed this book way more than I thought I would. This is a YA horror fiction that combines Jumanji and Takeshi's Castle in one of the most spine-chilling fashions that I've ever read. It is the first in the Death Games series that, like I've already mentioned before, which seems very fitting because Kristen Simmons employs dark fantasy elements from Japanese folklore to build an underworld that seems so much deathlier than ever. This is about 4 kids who are survivors of a gory, grim game from 4 years ago when their friend Ian died. Now they're going about their lives, they have been separated, but something seems to be bringing them together, and that is Ian's ghost. And now Ian's ghost is telling them to go back to the cave to look for him, and once they're there, they are somehow transported into this alternate hellscape, and now they have 1 night to complete 7 challenges, which if they don't, they will be stuck there forever. And this whole book was creepy and it was fun, and those are 2 words that I didn't think I would use in the same sentence ever. And that end was so good, and I was so excited to hear that there was going to be a second book after all, because if there weren't, then I would have written. If you're a horror fan, here's a recommendation for you. Read Find Him Where You Left Him Dead. The second book is going to come very, very soon. Next up is Ashiki Forever by Yashesh Rathod. Thank you to the author for the review copy. In this short romance novella, Yashesh Rathod pays tribute to the 90s Bollywood drama movie called Ashiki. And in Ashiki Forever, we follow Marlin, who is an orphan and is living in a Mumbai orphanage called Mother. And Marlin has dreams of becoming an international model like her late mother. Meanwhile, Rahul is an aspiring singer who is on the cusp of fame. And Marlin's orphanage is run by a psychopathic warden called Doyle, who puts restrictions on the girls' movements and making it feel like a prison. Rahul comes upon Marlin on a rain-washed night and it's instant love for him. Will he be able to win Marlin over or not? And how will they get through all this chaos forms the entire story. The book is sweet and fast-paced, and reading about Rahul and Marlin is a lot like watching Rahul and Anu on screen. And like any other Bollywood romance drama, it has you rooting for a happy ending. But insta love isn't my thing, and the writing is a little repetitive and loopy, which sort of drops it in the rating section. But it is still a fast-paced, feel-good love story that you can pick up if you are in an insta-lovey mood. This next book is a Kindle edition of a book that I bought for that one vlog that I said that I would put up in October, but then postponed it to November and then to December. But now I realized that posting it in January would make more sense. Why, you ask? Unfortunately, I'm still holding this project under wraps at the moment, so you'll have to wait until January end to see what this whole hullabaloo was about. Next were two more e-arcs that I received from Algonquin Books for Block Toast drops that I had with them. First was this favorite from Thrity Umbrigar, which was called The Museum of Failures, and here's another book recommendation coming your way. I feel like I've already spoken so much about this book so many times, but it also deserves all the love that it can get, that it is still getting. So this is about Remy Wadia, who returns to India to adopt a child and then decides to go visit his mother almost as an afterthought. But then he realizes, or he learns, that his mother is unwell. She has stopped speaking and is now in the hospital. So feeling guilty and out of a sense of duty, he decides to help her recover before returning to his life in the USA. But thanks to one photo that emerges, family secrets come tumbling out and they shake him to his core. And what Remy does in the face of his foundations crumbling forms the entire story. See, if I haven't said it before, let me say it now. I absolutely loved this book. And this book is a study in familial relationships, in love, loss, faith, life, death, forgiveness. And Thrity Umbrigar handles this with so much empathy and kindness. It's a delight to read. The way you feel about these characters swings from one end of the radar to another, but in the end, it will help you understand how varied human beings are. And the slow pace with which this goes about, it's really beautiful, and it will help your feelings about the book to evolve organically. And I'm just so glad to have read this book. I didn't think this would turn into a book recommendation video. And the second was this book called The Book of More Delights by Ross Gay, which was a sequel to his earlier book, The Book of Delights, and I DNF'd this book at 81%. This is a collection of essays in which the author talks about everyday delights. Some are random, some are well thought out, and many are simply heartwarming. But the reason I DNF'd this book was because the writing felt so disjointed to me, and it felt like the author kept stacking on the things that he kept remembering to the ends of sentences. It was like he was adding afterthoughts as he went. But if you don't mind this kind of lengthy writing, and if you want to read about positive, affirming thoughts, then this is one book that you should definitely try. Next up was Something Bad Is Going to Happen by Jessie Stephens. This was a review copy, and thank you Pan Macmillan Australia for the gifted book. This is Jessie Stephens' debut novel, and it's a study in depression and the behavior of people around depressives. This is about Adela, who is in a psychiatric ward after an episode. We are taken through her 20s and we get a glimpse into how her mind works, her family, her work, her friends, and her romantic relationships, all of it. And we see reasoning to her behavior and her choices, and what Adela does to handle all this chaos, and the choices that she makes to avoid the something bad that is going to happen. This is a book that will make you ask questions about your own mental health as we navigate through Adela's state of mind. The way she goes about it is a little roundabout, but Jessie Stephens manages to illustrate this remarkably well. So if you like reading mental health stories with a focus on depression in particular, then this is one book that you should definitely pick up. Next is The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. If you watched my last book haul, then you'll know that I got the Bookbinder of Jericho in July as a birthday gift. Since this is a companion novel to this book, I figured I had to go and get this book as well. So here we are. The Dictionary of Lost Words follows Esme as she realizes the truth about the lives of women in a patriarchal society at the beginning of the 20th century. And according to what I've read about this book, it promises to be a sort of a window into the lost narratives of women at the height of the women's suffrage movement, and that is something that I really enjoy reading. So I'm hoping that this book blows me away and make me glad that I bought it. Next are two more gifted copies from Pan Macmillan Australia. First is Learn by Heart by Emma Donoghue. I loved Emma Donoghue's previous works, be it The Pull of the Stars or Room, and I feel like this is also a book that contains those things that make her work stand out from the rest. This is a historical fiction novel set in 1805, and it follows two very young girls from two very different backgrounds who meet at a school for young ladies and whose lives are turned upside down. Emma Donoghue is a magician when it comes to executing historical fiction novels or stories like this one, and I'm hoping that this book will also appeal to me the way the others did. Next was Before We Say Goodbye by Toshikazu Kawaguchi and translated into English by Jeffrey Trosselot. I thought that this was the last in the series, but I've since learned that there was a fifth book that was released in Japan, and that gives me hope and makes me cautiously excited. And that hope, it stems from the fact that this book wasn't as good as books 1 and 3. Okay, so while the third book, Before Your Memory Fades, moved to Cafe Donna Donna in the Japanese hillside, we move back to Cafe Funiculi Funicula in Before We Say Goodbye. And four people wanting to travel back in time come to the cafe. One is a husband who wants to talk to his wife who is currently in a coma. A woman who is guilt-ridden for not being with her dog in his last few days wants to say goodbye. And a woman who didn't answer a proposal but was soon dumped by her boyfriend for someone else wants answers. And the last person is a daughter who lashed out at her father, wanting to move away from what she sees as his controlling ways. While every story is warm, hopeful and emotional while being easy to read, I agree that it becomes a little regressive at times, and the translation was also a bit off like it was in book 2. Other than that, Before We Say Goodbye is a good enough bunch of stories, the kind that I will always want to read. Next was Percy Jackson and the Chalice of the Gods by Rick Riordan. This is the 6th in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, and one that I was over the moon about because the Percy Jackson universe, as I mentioned like n number of times before, is one that I will always return to with a skip and a hop. And imagine my glee when I finally got to hold this in my hands, given how gorgeous this cover is. Just look. This book starts off after the events of the Heroes of Olympus series, and it's like a mini quest for Percy where he has to get letters of recommendations from the gods if he wants entrance into New Rome University. So here Ganymede approaches Percy. Ganymede is the cupbearer of the gods. He is the cupbearer to Zeus, and he tells him that the chalice of the gods is missing and he needs to get it back before the next feast. Otherwise, Zeus is going to lose his mind. More than usual, that is. So now Percy has to go on a quest to find this chalice along with Annabeth and Grover, and he has to find it and return it to Mount Olympus and to Ganymede before the feast, or Zeus will lose his mind, etc, etc, etc. This is more of a novella, but it is as engaging as any of the other Percy Jackson books. It is laugh out loud funny, it is brilliant, and if you've read Uncle Rick's books before, then this will feel like a warm hug. It's like a homecoming of sorts. I absolutely love this book, and I cannot say it enough. Next was Minor Detail by Adanya Shibli. I got this book when Fitzcarraldo Editions made it available for free after the Frankfurt Book Fair. Decided not to award the author Adanya Shibli following the October 7 attacks. If you ask me, this retraction is tone deaf and blind in so many ways. Like, it deliberately ignores the decades-long genocide being committed by the settler state on Adanya Shibli's people. Anyway, I read this book last month and I felt the anger bubbling up inside me. Anger, frustration, helplessness. This book is told in two timelines, one in 1949 and one 25 years later. In the first timeline, we are confronted with the gang rape and murder of an Arab girl by Israeli soldiers. And in the second timeline, a young woman who was born on that very day when that Arab girl was murdered, she sets out to find out what exactly happened 25 years ago. Through this book, we see glimpses of Palestinian life, oppressed and struggling for free breath. It shows the power inequality in Palestine and how things haven't really changed for Palestinians in the decades since the Nakba. And all of it is so raw and sharp, it boils your blood. If you haven't read this book already, please do read it. It is absolutely necessary reading. Please do read it. Next are two books that I was especially excited to get my hands on. First up is Roman Stories by Jhumpa Lahiri, one of my favorite authors of all time. And I have started reading this book. I'm about 26, 27 pages in, and boy oh boy, it is so good. I can't even begin. And I'll tell you what it feels like. It feels like returning home, but it also feels like going on a world tour. But while you're on this world tour, it's like a warm sepia filter is on the world and you're going through it like that. That's what it is. And these stories, as the title obviously suggests, are set in Rome, and they follow different characters as they navigate life in Rome as outsiders. And needless to say, I am loving this so far. I've read two stories and I am absolutely loving it, and I somehow have the feeling that this book is going to become one of my favorites of 2023. I don't know how, don't ask me. Next is another author who is one of my favorite of all time, and that is Matt Haig, and the book is The Girl Who Saved Christmas. This is about Amelia, a girl who asks Father Christmas if she wants any wish to come true. But when she sees that the magic is ebbing and when she sees that Father Christmas is busy, she takes things into her own hands in order to save Christmas. And I've been waiting for Christmas to start reading this book, and I'm half sure that I'll be spending the entirety of Christmas Day reading this book and doing exactly that. Next are two more books from Pan Macmillan Australia. Thank you for the gifted copies, Pan Mac. And I have read one of these, one I haven't. And the book that I have not read yet is Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldry. This is a prequel to Legends and Lattes, which I bought a few weeks after receiving this book from Pan Mac, and I will talk about that later. This is about an orc mercenary who is wounded in some battle with a necromancer or something, and she is sent off to a distant beach town to recuperate. And she spends her time in a bookshop alongside the proprietor, who is like very foul-mouthed and irreverent. And it's not long before adventure comes knocking, alongside the thought that maybe this change was for the better after all, and maybe that it's going to be more sustainable than she thought it was. To be honest, when I received this book, I got so excited because I wanted to read this book, but I haven't gotten the chance to, especially because I would like to read these books in the order that they were released. And I'm hoping that I get to this book sooner rather than later, and I do have a bit of a positive hope, if I might say. And the one that I've read is Mr. Einstein Secretary by Matthew Riley. This was my first Matthew Riley book, and I can't tell you how much fun I had while reading it. This is a cross between a historical fiction and a thriller, and it's about Hannah Fisher, who is born in Germany to an American mother and a German father. The Fishers were neighbors to Albert Einstein and his wife. It's probably a good premise to set up as a fictional connection between Einstein and Hannah. We follow Hannah as she navigates life after her mother's death in 1910, then her father's death following the Treaty of Versailles, her move to America with Einstein's help, her joining a secretarial school, her graduating from that school and her becoming secretary to a huge industrialist over there, then becoming Einstein Secretary, then unintentionally moving to Germany and becoming secretary to Albert Speer, who was the personal architect of Adolf Hitler, and witnessing the horrors of World War II from within. There's physics, there's mentions of some of the most revered scientists of the 20th century, there's action, there's intrigue, there's fast-paced writing, and there's so much more in here. And the short chapters make it especially worthwhile, and that is something that I absolutely love in a book. So basically here's another book recommendation for you, and I suspect that this will be part of my best books of 2023 video, which will be coming very, very soon. Next was an ebook that I got for a video that I'm hoping will go up next week, and the book that I got was The Ugly Duckling by Hans Christian Andersen. While this is a short story about being patient with growth, I learned more about Hans Christian Andersen in this copy. I've spoken more about this in my November 2023 wrap-up. If you'd like to go check that out, link will be here as well as in the description box below. Next was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. As I mentioned before, I got this book weeks after I received Bookshops and Bone Dust, and I have started reading this one. I'm about 74 pages in and I'm really enjoying it. This is about Viv, who is an orc mercenary, and she has had enough of the bloody life and she doesn't want to do the mercenary stuff anymore, and she's hanging up her boots. Now she moves to a place called Thune and she decides to settle down there, and she decides to open up a cafe, even though nobody over there has ever heard of the drink called coffee. Whether or not she overcomes any of the obstacles that are about to come her way to actually get success, or whether she will go back to that adventurous life, forms this entire story. And I'm about 74 pages in, as I've already mentioned before, and I'm really enjoying it. It is like a proper fantasy. It is grounded enough to feel very real, but it's whimsical enough to not let you forget that this is fantasy fiction. I'm just hoping that I feel this way and I continue to feel this way, or feel better about it by the end of the book. Next was volume 5 of Heartstopper, another book that I was equally excited to get and equally sad when I finished it in just one setting. But in this volume, Nick and Charlie are exploring their relationship and they are nervous to take the next step. Now Nick is about to graduate and he has to finalize colleges and has to make a decision about which college he wants to attend. His heart tells him that he cannot be away from Charlie, but his mind tells him that he has to make the right decision for himself. How Nick and Charlie navigate all of this forms volume 5 of Heartstopper. First of all, I love the fact that all Heartstopper editions are uniform and not like some other series. But second of all, Heartstopper is so consistent with its characters that all I want to do is jump into the pages and give all of them a big hug. So when the release date was announced for this book, there was no doubt that I was going to go and get it. Next are 2 e-copies that the author sent over. Thank you to the authors for the review copies. You will be seeing review videos for these books very soon, so stay tuned. First up is The Mountains and the Masters by Anurag Sharma. This is the story of a woodcutter who goes through a lot of pain and conflict in order to follow his dreams. Does he succeed or does he succumb? It forms the crux of the story. And I'm looking forward to reading this book, especially because of the concepts of faith and transformation that it promises to explore. And the next review copy is The Lost Treasure of Azad Hind Fauj by Piyush Rohankar. This is a historical fiction set in the Second World War, and it follows the Azad Hind Fauj and its plans to start a bank in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands following liberation from the British. But these plans are dashed when the crew as well as the treasure that it is transporting go missing, and it promises to be a thrilling patriotic journey through time. And last but not the least is a book that absolutely breaks my heart to be talking about, although I know that Matthew Perry probably didn't intend for it to be so, and that is Friends, Lovers and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. This book, Matthew Perry's memoir, came out in 2022 and we figured that we would get to it with time. We had a lot of time, but little did we know that life, being the cruel witch that she is, would take him away so soon. So we got the copy and we intend to read it as soon as possible. Just Matthew Perry is gone too soon, yeah. So those plus all the e-copies that I mentioned to you were all the books on my last book haul of the year. Which of these have you read? Which ones do you want to read? What books are on your last book haul of the year? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, please like it and share it to spread the word. And if you like my content and would like to see more from me, don't forget to hit subscribe and click on the bell icon beside the subscribe button to get notified as and when I post new videos. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, keep reading, keep watching, and add melodrama to your life.